Welcome back to the Secret Underground Lair. Today, prior to doing the taillights and the interior insulation, a little bit cooler day today, but still nice enough to work outside. I'm gonna work on putting on a bumper. There's no rear bumper on this trailer. There used to be when it was original. But the original bumper just kind of came out of the back of the trailer. It was an extension of the frame. Came out about here, across, and then back in here. So it never went the full width of the trailer. It was a little rounded. It was nice, it worked. But on this bumper, I'm going to make it extend a little bit closer to the edge. Whoops, a little closer to the edge of the trailer. So it'll come out almost to about there. And almost to there. I'm going to use some steel that I have lying around here. That'll be the bumper portion. And I'm going to use this piece to make some brackets. They're going to be two 18-inch pieces, about like that piece of wood. And what I want to do is extend from this frame of the donor trailer and make it kind of come up on a bit of an angle so that it comes up about here. Something like that. And then we'll weld the straight bumper on here. So that's today's project. I'm going to start by getting the angle that I want here so I can cut this piece off at the appropriate angle on both ends. Make two pieces like that, a little bracket that'll be bolted on here, bolt on the other side. And then we're going to attach the bumper onto that. Let's get started. So I'm using my little angle gauge here, setting this test piece on top. Just finding an optimal angle. That seems to be the one that I want. It gives me a little bit of clearance here. And I have a little room that I can move this up and down, where this piece will attach to the plate that's going to be bolted onto here. So I'm pretty happy with that angle. Not sure what it is, but it seems to be the right one. So now what I'll do is go cut some plates for this and then cut off this piece at that angle, 18 inches long. Right, now I need to make two cuts here and here. That is about 3/8 inch steel, 5/16 anyway. Cut off wheel makes pretty quick work of it. I'll put these in the vise and make the cuts on the vise. Cut a little corner off the pieces just to match the fitting on the trailer itself. And now I'm just using a flap disc to clean up the rust off the piece. Looking a little better. So I'll just go after the other three sides and come back when that's done. Alrighty, I have my little Harbor Freight metal bandsaw. on my little jig here that lets me use it like a shop hacksaw. Our piece is put in clamped in, supported on the far end on the stand. I set the angle to what I had found with our angle finder and ready to make the first cut. So we're going to make 3 cuts here. First cut is cutting off this end, the next cut is to length, and then the next cut is the second piece to length. This is a loud saw, so I'll have you turn down and probably on time lapse for this. So although I did have the volume turned down, that was cut in real time. So as it's cutting through this portion, it just like a hot knife through butter. I'm very impressed with this little saw. It served me extremely well. Okay, I'm gonna move this up and cut 2 pieces 18 inches long, and I'll put you on time lapse for that. And there are the 2 bumper brackets, so I'm just going to go clean them up with the flap disc and make them nice shiny steel, and then we can tack them on to the braces or the mounts that we did a few minutes ago. And there's our bumper brackets all cleaned up, now ready to weld. I've got the hole cut in here, ready to weld this piece to this piece. This will then be, when this bracket is welded, we'll bolt it onto the trailer, and then we can start worrying about how to attach the bumper itself onto these ends. So do a little bit of welding right after lunch. So I've done a quick little tack on 2 sides for this bracket, and I have mounted one of them here. So you can see how that kind of angles up the way I wanted. I have enough clearance below the trailer. There's a little bit of some adjustability on that bolt. So let's mount the other one, and then we can see where this bumper is going to lie. Okay, bracket on. Well, let's check out the bumper, where that's going to sit. And there is some rough placement. Obviously I need to cut the bumper off, but I'm going to cut them off just right at that. Oh, there's a bolt hole right there. I'm going to cut them off at that bolt hole, and cut them off at this bolt hole, and then might do just a little bend once it's in place, or as we're about to put it in place. So of course it's tilted at an angle. This obviously has to be set up a little bit more like that, but I just have it roughly in place, just clamping some brackets onto the underside. You can see what I've done there. So I'm going to move the brackets around to here so they come out this way so I can get it level and oriented the way that I want. And then we can mark up the bumper and cut it. All right, that's the bumper cut to length. The end of the bumper is just kind of flush with the outside edge of the tire. I'm not pointing the right thing. Right, so the end of the bumper there is flush with the outside edge of the tire on both sides. So I'm kind of happy with how that's lining up. Doesn't quite look like it on this side, but it is. So I'm going to go with that, which means that the bracket here is the outside edge of that bracket is 10 inches from the end of the bumper. 10 inches on either side. So it's lined up nicely. I'm going to take that off, the whole business off, and just tack the bumper to the brackets. And then we'll go from there. That tucked in place. Gonna give it another fit. All right, bumper's on. For good fit. So I'm very pleased with how that went on. I am going to put a little bit of gusseting in right from the top of the bracket there out to the bracket arm. So where it mounts on the trailer, I have that plate. I'm going to put a little gusset from there out to the arm a little bit, just to give a little bit more strength. And of course now I can finish up all the welding on it. Also the bumper will be capped, and I'm going to put a hole in each end just to allow some drainage. Same thing with these arms. I'll put some holes in a hole in the bottom of the arm just to allow for some drainage from any condensation that might build up in there. And yeah, I think we're good. Now, before you go crazy on me, this bumper is not intended to stop a 60-mile-per-hour crash. It's intended to, you know, in case you're backing the trailer into a tight space, I may bump up against a small shrub or a tree or something, and I don't want that smacking into the fiberglass. So this is primarily for that kind of protection, and it's also to provide a mount for the spare tire. So I'm going to have to weld a bracket on here where the spare tire will be mounted, and on the far side a little bracket for the license plate. So that's really the purpose of this bumper. It's not really crash protection per se, it's more brush protection. Alrighty, let me finish up this welding. Alright, I'm ready to put the end cap on the bumper. So I've got a piece that I cut out from one of the scraps we cut off. I'm just going to tack that on there. And yes, it's too long. I'm taking a page out of Fitzy's welding tips here. I'm not going to sweat that because I'm going to weld this in here, cut it off, and then weld it in. that off, do a little bit of grinding, we'll finish this up. There's a couple little pinholes here that I think I'll try to address. Just, I'm in the neighborhood and I have the tool, why not? So that's sealed up really nicely. And I have nice rounded corners here. Still pretty warm, but that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to do the same thing to the other end. And then okay, I got some primer on our Boler bumper. So cleaned up all of the welds and so on. I just sprayed a little bit of primer on there. So I'm ready now to take this bumper, put it back on the Boler, and start working on a spare tire carrier. But that'll be our next video. So thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. I will see you on the next video.